Hey, everybody. For our discussion this week, we are going to be addressing trauma. Many people have experienced trauma, but people are not always comfortable discussing these traumatic experiences in their life. And in discussing what techniques I would use if a client is reluctant to talk about what happened to them, I think I would start by discussing what trauma is. What does that look like? What does that mean? Some people may not know what that even means. And our text defines trauma as an experience that is extremely upsetting and it's at least temporarily overwhelms the individual's internal resources and produces lasting psychological symptoms. I would want to make sure that the client is able to understand that the environment that we have and where we're talking and our interaction together is respectful, it's compassionate, and that it's a very safe place for them to talk about what has happened to them in the past uh, in these difficult situations. And if a client happened to ask me, why are you asking me about this? It happened in the past, it happened a long time ago. Why do you care so much? I would explain to my client that I do care about them and I care about their well being and I want them to be as healthy as possible, as healthy as they can possibly be. I want them to have an understanding of what has happened to them and to be able to deal with that trauma in the best way possible. I would explain that trauma not only um, affects the person who has experienced that trauma, but that trauma also affects their family and it affects their friends. It's multi generational. There's this intergenerational transmission of trauma, which happens when parents who've been traumatized can have children with increased risk for these emotional problems and behavioral problems. Um, so, reliance on different substances, alcohol, drugs, or how many trauma survivors can sometimes ease their symptoms, ease their pain. So, I would make sure they know that sometimes medications are helpful in healing their trauma and helping them to deal with that trauma and that's okay. If they need medications, that's an okay thing and that we could make the appropriate referrals to get them to a doctor who could do some medication management for them and help them with that. When I discuss the effects of trauma on people's lives while still trying to empower them, I would let people know that trauma leaves us vulnerable. It leaves people vulnerable. It leaves us feeling powerless. Um, we always want to look at each individual person, where they have come from, and how that traumatic event could affect them individually. Um, I would explain to them that the traumatic events affect our bodies as well as affecting our minds. And research has shown how trauma can affect the brain, and there are also parts of the nervous system um, that are affected by trauma. And sometimes our bodies can hold on to these traumatic memories even when we can't completely recall them. So that's my thoughts on our discussion board this week. Thank you all so much.